Good afternoon. So, Chapter 12, redoing it again because something was wrong with my mic last week. I actually thought these were okay, and I don't know what happened, but these I've been recording here in my office, and do you see that it tells me right there that sound is there? So, I don't know. But anyway, Chapter 12, and that is information security, wrapping it up, ongoing maintenance of your security program, security management models, and you know with computers there's a model for everything. For networking, it's TCP/IP networking model or the OSI model, and programming, it's the UML model, so there's a model for everything. The key factors in external and internal environment. Planning, risk assessment, vulnerability, remediation tie into the maintenance of that, to build readiness and review. And we've already, we've seen that most hackers run around a system for a long time before they ever know they're running around in that system. And then sometimes, even though they know they've been breached, they don't tell people right away. They let it, get cold and all that kind of stuff. The digital forensics and forensic science is one of the relatively new majors that you see for your schools putting into place. Education is typically very slow, although community colleges generally change and adapt, especially in computer science, quicker than other four-year schools do. It just takes a while. Acquire, analyze, maintain all the material that you need. It says that we should not be overconfident in security, that we should always be thinking of threats and vulnerabilities and looking to make sure that our program is not out of date. As we just said, NSA is create procedures and recommendations in the systems in the company that can be changed and that are always looking for improvement. The security maintenance model adopted to a particular company. Now, I had mentioned that before, actually in the last video, that a degree from any college can only give you a foundation. Then when you get to that company, then you'll learn how that company does it. There's so many different kinds of software. There's so many different ways local area networks can be set up and all of that. So you get a foundation at college, and then you learn how each company does it when you get to work there. The SP800-100 Information Handbook, a guide for managers. And as usual, let me just stop and pause and find that online. Now, what I was looking at was the date for this. And this is 2012, so it has been updated. When you first key that in, people don't take down their old stuff. You see 2007, there's 210. There's a 2006, but this one actually says 212. So it's $15. A security handbook, a guide for managers, how you once you set it in place, and that's a relatively cheap buy for that handbook. 13 areas. Now, when you look at the book, each one of these 13s take up the chapter. That's what they're for, and when you read through that, you see, I looked at that as I was reading this chapter, particular monitoring of activities, that it's an ongoing basis. Now, that security handbook is mentioned on 593, and then we start the 13 things. Information security governance is first. The system development life cycle is next. So all 13 are listed here in this chapter 12 and discussed in chapter 12. A little cute note there: not all issues are negative. We get so many negatives that we think everything's a negative. So information security governance is the first one in those 13 things to look out for. System development life cycle is the second thing, and when you look at that, there's a table in your book that shows you the activity and then the description of those activities, and that goes on for 2.5 pages. Awareness and training, of course, everybody in the company needs to be involved of security, everybody, even the custodian workers and those people. Planning the capital, sometimes everybody's not in there. Sometimes you have input, but you don't actually make the decision, as in my case. Interconnected systems where you have 2 or more information systems sharing data, and a lot of times that's done on the cloud nowadays. Performance measures, how it's working. There's a 6-phase process there, and when you look at that, it goes, it's on page 600, the requirements, and then a check, yes or no, is it working, for the performance measurements to make sure that it is doing what it was set out to do, and if there's something in that cycle that needs to be corrected, then it's corrected and put back into place. Control performance, the baselines and the matrix. That's what you're doing here, setting up the system, the baseline for it. 7 is security planning. 8 is information technology, contingency planning. What happens? What's the recovery process, and what's the documentation? I have to stress this again. I do it in every class. In organizations, sometimes there's no documentation. It's all in someone's brain. And if that's not put to paper with documentation and with ongoing management of that, then if that person loses, that organization's in a hurt. I had a company when I was working at the state one time call me, and the guy that managed all of their production spreadsheets, they fired him just off the top of the head. Then they could not open those files. Excel and other applications, sometimes you can password protect them, and if you do password protect them, and you cannot recover that file if you don't know that password. So you want to be really careful that you have a process for recovery for everything on your system. If you're going to be a network administrator, you're responsible for the resources on that network, and the resources are those database servers and the other materials that the people need to work with. Risk management is number 5, including their identification analysis and how you manage those. 10 is certification, accreditation, and security assessments. All colleges that are public. Now, if they're private college, like for Virginia colleges and ITT Tech, they're private. Their classes don't transfer to public, and public don't transfer. I don't know if public transfers to them or not. I'm just saying that the public colleges across the whole United States have an accreditation every 10 years. They go over every single piece of paper and make sure that you're doing what you should be doing, and they always find things. And they give you a period of time to correct those things. If one college that I worked with had 36 things that they found that had to be corrected. And it's everything. It's every aspect of the colleges, including the buildings, but also the way finance works, the way registration, all of that works. So in our case, we're taking a look at certifications in the industry. And if you take a look on page 605 in your book, there's program questions. If it's policy or if it's a procedure, has it been implemented? Has it been tested? Has it been integrated into the company environment? All of those kinds of things. Security services and products acquisition, the actual buying of those. Incidents response, that's what I've been complaining about. Our incidents was a death threat. Our college was closed for one day, and they have yet to tell us what was going on with that. Now, that doesn't, maybe there's a reason they haven't told us, but our security person here at Sneed fills out an incident report for everything that happens. And you are supposed to be able to view that if you work here or if you go to school here. And what I found was that there's some out there, but it has not been kept up to date. So incidents responses and what happens. That and how that works. Let's see up the next slide. Yeah, it has the determining the need phase, the assessment phase, the solution, the implementation, and then the operations. And you want to make sure that that's all in place before you can say that it's closing out. Usually you're just keeping reviewing in that. That has a table over on the next page in your book. On help desk, on page 609, there's a thing about a help desk, what the advantages are. And Sneed just now has put in an IT help desk. Now, we've always had a maintenance help desk since I worked here, but IT has just now put it in. And I think a lot of that has to do with balancing the workload and being able to track what you did do. You need that in an organization. The security maintenance model, configuration and change, focus on the organization itself and how to maintain its systems, do external and internal monitoring, plan and risk and vulnerability and all that, and then review it from time to time. And that's what it gives you a look at how that should flow in your organization, the maintenance model. The external environment, looking at your threats, know who they come from, know when your organization is vulnerable, collect information about that from all the different sources that you can. Be ready. The data sources, acquiring the threat and the vulnerability, turning the data into information now. Right here, I do it in every single class I teach. Can I just do it here? That's what computers do. And if I've done this more than once in this class, I apologize, but I could not remember, so I wanted to do it. Computers are an information processing machine. And how they do that is that they accept data. That's the input. That data is processed depending on what you're actually doing it. If it's a software package, if it's Excel, and then what you get out of that is information, accurate, timely information. Now let me just give you an example of that. This question is going to be on our next test. Let me use Excel. Excel does math, and you learn it in 146, and in 146 you only get just about 1% of what it actually can do. It can do lots of things, and Excel is just going to keep on getting that way. When I was in that training seminar for SQL Server, they showed us the next version, 2016, of Excel is going to be made so that it can do a lot more with the cloud and things that it's doing now. Now let's say that we're going to do payroll. Hours worked are what they are, right? Then what each employee made worked last week. Now the pay rates don't change that often when when you get a promotion or something like that. So let's say that someone worked 40 hours and they made $15 a day. Now, $15 an hour. Now, that is the data. That's history. And if you have 1 million employees, you're going to do this for the same, for all of those employees. I'm sorry, that door. Okay, so I'm going to put a formula in here that takes the hours worked and multiplies it times the rate of pay. That was the process, and that's the information. And every company does this either on a weekly, biweekly, or monthly basis. So turning data into information processing cycle. And if you want to save that, and you do, you save payroll and that kind of thing forever, then you store it. But the information processing cycle is data process into information. Now that's looking at it with input, process into output. There's also the hardware. What are your input devices? And that your mouse and your keyboard are the most common. In the process is RAM and the CPU. Information is how you see it is the monitor or the printer, and then if you save it, of course, it's a file. But the information processing cycle is very important in computers. That's what they do. So your external intelligence or your external data comes from your vendors, your suppliers, if you're working with Microsoft products, they're going to help you with help desk and with all kinds of tutorials online and that kind of stuff. It all has to be analyzed, no matter where it came from, to see if it's applicable in that particular organization's environment. So taking a look at external monitoring, the escalation, the incidents response, reports, and then to make sure that everybody knows it. Detailed on the highest risk warnings, data collection and management. If you fill out a form on the internet, you're in their database. If you buy something on the internet, you're in their database. So that data collection is made lots of different ways. But nowadays, generally, online is a huge way to collect data. It's called data mining. And then what they do is they monitor your online activity with cookies, and they capture your information, your names, your addresses, your phone numbers, and they sell that. They sell that to people that want to sell you something. I went to a site one day because I was reading a news article. I'm an avid news collector. And about a week later, I got a catalog in the mail. That catalog was not something that I would buy anything from. I'm not going to say what it actually was, but it wasn't something that I would buy anything from. They got that because of my surfing habits. They found my address and phone number. Now, cookies are saved to your machine from every website that you visit, and they are tracking. There's websites that have clear GIFs or clear images that are usually just a pixel by a pixel. It's monitoring what you're doing online. It is capturing your data, and I apologize for all that noise. I really hope you can't hear it as well as I can. So that raw intelligence is what I'm talking about, that data mining. It's just like if you have a landline phone, in the front of your phone book somewhere, it tells you that they sell your information. If you take out magazine subscriptions, they tell you that they sell your information. I just moved into a new home last December, and now, 11 months later, even before now, all of those people that want money from you already have my address information. And, it's St. Jude and the Heart Association and all those. You can't give to everybody, but once you give to one, they sell it. Okay, so that's how they get that raw intelligence. That's how they know so much about us. So data mining, and Excel is one of the applications that's used for data mining. What are the goals of the company for its networks, for its systems, for its security? That's utmost important. Internal monitoring, looking at the devices, make sure you know and have an inventory list of everything in the company. Make sure you have monitoring of IT, the internal state of the organizations and the systems. If you're going to be a network administrator, you're just going to have to realize that if you get to be a network administrator, that company's going to call you when that network goes down. I don't care if it's Christmas Day, you're going in. Things happen. One of my students that's an intern at a company this semester was telling me that they have an interruptible power supply. Remember, that was one of our assignments because it's so important in an organization. That only lasts 1 hour. If the power went out, they have 1 hour to make sure their systems are still working, because if the power totally goes out, their system's going to go out. You don't see it as much as you used to, but haven't you all been in a place that says, well, our network's down, our computer's down? That student said that they have a power supply that is ran by gas, a really old system, but they actually put it into place when the power was down for those several days during the tornado. So acts of nature are also an important consideration in your security. What's going to happen if your power goes out and stays out for an extended period of time? And I hate to bring it up, but just 9/11 and what it done to those Twin Towers and what it took for those companies to get back into business, it's just amazing. And so acts of nature, terrorism do exist. They could shut down a company pretty quick. I always am a little bit antsy about our reliance on computers and the internet. If a terrorist organization really wanted to cripple a country, they could do so just by shutting down the internet for an extended period of time. I really believe that. So all of this that we're learning in this class is not just for nothing. It's really it really happens. Just because it hasn't happened where you work doesn't mean that it won't, right? Okay, I'm going to go on. So take a look at the infrastructure in the company. Make sure it's monitored and that you have intrusive detection systems. Look at the IP addresses, that can they be verified, participate in the management, the control processes, the reviews, all of that kind of stuff. Monitoring the internal organizations need to have that carefully planned. What I just said about an inventory of network devices, communication channels, all of that on paper, so that if the main IT guy is not there, others can keep on doing the work. Carefully organized and stored, manual or automated. I had a girlfriend that put a rather large programming development into place at JSU. She worked at JSU at that time. And part of her job was not just writing the programs, but it was doing a model so that if she wasn't there, the person behind her could pick it up and still run that program. So it's very important that things be put down on paper and that they're stored in a secure place. The intrusion and provision systems. The most important value of raw intelligence is providing indicators, log files, monitoring traffic. The attack signatures from unsuccessful attacks can identify the weaknesses. If you really are going into this, read about how Snowden did what he did. Read about on that information is beautiful. Some of those hacks. There's a guy that went through the heat and air conditioning system on the network to infiltrate their database. There's just lots of things that are weaknesses that you might not see as a weakness until it's actually hit, until the threat is actually there. Look and compare. The state now against what it was 2 weeks ago, those kinds of things, have procedures in place. What happens is companies get so busy, tied up in doing the day-to-day operations, that things like this fall by the wayside. That's really what happens a lot of times. So look at your current state, and that baseline state we've already looked at it. Set a baseline that this is the way it should be, and then monitor how the current actually compares to that baseline. Keep a lookout over the entire thing. Plan. Establish a formal in the security program for everybody. make sure that everybody's trained for it, coordinate all that with IT, uh, have a mindset of all of the people in the organization for the risks that are involved. That's one thing that our organization needs. Our IT department, when we have professional development, they will keep us up on all of the new changes, like when we put in the new registration system, they did that. But the actual risk assessment and those kinds of things, they don't. And I'm not really sure our IT department at SNEED has this in place. Review of ongoing information for new enhancements, all of those kind of things, because it's constantly changing. What are the future needs? Is that company going to grow? And if it grows, what's its impact on information security? What is the money involved? You know, so taking a look at the planning and the risk assessment, we have done this practically all semester after we got through that first 3 chapters in the beginning of the book with the history and all that. Large projects broken down into smaller projects for several reasons. I'm going to pause and see if I can open that lab so that they won't keep slamming the door. Hold on just a second. Okay. I propped the door open, so maybe they won't be slamming in and out. If you break large projects down into smaller, manageable chunks, then usually you're going to complete that quicker than if you just tried to tackle the whole thing. All software companies do this that I know about. Microsoft, like when they're creating a new operating system, they will break it down into chunks, into teams, and each team will have a part. And they, years ago, I learned that they call it compare, synchronize, compile, compare, compile, and synchronize. So all the teams would get together and discuss where they were, if it was ready to put all of the parts together and then run it to see if it works. So it improves it 100%, I promise, if you can break it down into smaller chunks. Then you each team has a part that they do, or a chunk. I probably have bragged about my daughter this semester. I brag about her all the time. She's a project manager. So under her are all of these software developers that are working on different parts of that software, and that company creates financial software. So then they have a timeline, and they use Excel for that, actually, to put the large projects back together and to make sure that they're on track. Then they can discuss what impacts them all, maybe coming from one group. So all the advantages, breaking it down: security, the risk assessment. The risk assessment identifies and documents it's coordinated with all of the other documents. The primary goal, the identification of the vulnerabilities, of course. And when you look at your book at 617, there are companies there that are listed, and then what kind of information they have in a nice table. Lots of companies provide this kinds of software. Document the background information, track the vulnerabilities, communicate that to everyone. Make sure management's involved. So you're extracting the vulnerabilities. They're showing you that the reason they're using this is to show you that even this is part of the database. You may have more than one database. You may have a risk database. You may have a vulnerability database. But all of that data is used to put the system in place. Document flaws in the organization. 5 assessment processes, and let me see. Was just going to point out, I like the, I didn't have time, but a lot of times when I do have time in these kind of PowerPoints, I'll put up the page that that's actually on, and that helps you sometimes. The security risk assessment, this one is 624. The penetration testing, now that's CIS 245 that's offered in the spring. It's called pen testing, and that's what this is. You'll get a set of, you'll have labs in that class. I think most of the content is online, but you're going to, it's done as part of a full security audit with a black box and a white box, 2 ways. We know what a black box is because we hear about it on the airlines all the time. What is a white box? I'm going to pause and I'm going to bring it right back. Okay, so it's also known as clear box testing, glass box testing, transparent testing, structural testing. It's a way to test software that tests the internal structures of an application as opposed to the functionality of the black box. So that you will see in the next class in the spring if you plan to go forward with information and network security. Because when I asked Mr. Randall about labs for this class, he was saying they'll get it in the pen testing class. So plan, schedule, notify, target a selection, test a selection, scan it, analysis, keep the records. Intranet, now remember that there's an intranet that we all know, it's public domain. The intranet is a secure network in a company. You want to make sure that on that intranet that everything is secure. Now let me see. It doesn't, but there's an extranet that includes the intranet, but also maybe your suppliers, people external to the company that still need a secure environment. Attackers often target members in the company. They will, we get a spam here that looks like our teachers credit union. So sometimes there's lots of ways that this actually happens. And we've learned that a lot of the hacks are done through malware. The malware gets into the system some way, and then it branches out from there to be a full attack. Platform security, find vulnerabilities in misconfigured systems. Now, I have taught the full database track as of this semester, the full database track. And what I have learned is the Oracle database relies on the DBA to put all the security into place. So you would really have to have several years of experience to maintain that database, to know where the vulnerabilities may come in from, and how to make sure that security features are put into place to keep it from happening. Misconfigured systems fail to comply, and isn't that what happened with the National Security Agency? They had a misconfigured, out-of-date system that allowed that guy to get in and steal all those documents. There are automated measurement systems so that you can use to put into place to help you with all of this vulnerability assessments. The wireless, check that as part of the systems, and you know that we have a student's wireless network here. There's a wireless capability generally at McDonald's and Books A Million, and I see people with their computers in McDonald's all the time tapping into their wireless. They're going to take advantage of a flaw to get into that system. So that's what the pen testing that you'll take in the spring, that should be very, very interesting. See how that actually works. Modems. how many of us use that anymore, but it's one device that can be there. One element of this called war dialing uses scripted dialing attacks. Now that's what happens on my phone number. It's still happening. I didn't want to get a new, you've heard me talk about that for months now, because I didn't want to get a new phone, and I still may have to, but that's what they're doing. They've got a pool of phone numbers, and they're just using a scripted dialing attack against my phone number. Lots of places have your phone numbers, right? So report the vulnerabilities. Low cost makes relational databases a realistic choice, right? In that database track, you learn the low-end databases that are cheap and the high-end databases that are really expensive. Everything is in a database. I promise you, there's no telling how many we're in. Informed decision-making, the relationships on the organization. Make sure you have a team approach. That's really a good buzzword to put on your resume, that you are a team player, that you work with other people. The transfer of that risk, make sure your organization all buys into it. You hope you've got the right people in the right positions to make the right decisions. That's what you're hoping. Threat removal, you're never going to get rid of them completely. You really are not. You just want to make sure that you know where you're vulnerable, and you know where your risks are, and you know and you've got solutions in place. Applying patch software, implementing a workaround, all of those kinds of things. Policy review, program review, rehearse it, inform people, all of that. Okay. And then digital forensics. What happened during an attack, how it happened. You see this on all the cop shows. The preservation, the identification, the extraction, documentation, interpretation of all the digital media, the evidence material, the items that are used in the legal and and basing the policies of the company, investigate allegations, and then to find the root cause of those things. Protect and forget, patch and proceed. Two approaches. Do it that way. Apprehend and prosecute. Pursue and prosecute. The identification of the responsible people. Do you know that sometimes it's really hard? Let me give you an example. There was someone that went to the open lab at the Gadsden University of Alabama Center, and that person wrote a huge long letter bad-mouthing our president. Okay, so what happened was they found the machine it came from, the exact time it was sent, but they could not prove who was sitting there. So it involves a lot. When you have open labs and in your company, maybe you have open computers that for a particular reason that people use. So you just have to be really careful to make sure. I have in my classes, I have caught students cheating. It's a fact. In an online CIS146 class 1 semester, there was 12 sets. And what I tell them is that if I can prove it 100%, it's the only time I ever accuse. If I can't prove it 100%, I just don't accuse. But you can see where online education, and that's one of the reasons that I do my assignments like I did in this class. I did some of the exams the way I did in this class. Every student has a unique answer. So I can't do that for every class. I really can't, based on the number of students that are in there and the type of class it is. But the identification is sometimes very, very hard. Most organizations cannot do it. they don't have a good data collection. They don't have a good way to analyze. The FBI came, and I probably have told you that during the course of this. They wanted students that were trained in Cisco, but they also wanted those students to have a 4-year degree. So we had a student that had completed Cisco here. Then he went on to UAH and came back here. He had to have a couple of programming languages and then applied and is working at the FBI. So forensics is something that is not going to go away either. It's only going to keep getting more so that way, where you're looking at phone records and computer logs and all of those kinds of things. Expertise can be obtained by training, and I really believe that. Like I said, you can take lots and lots of classes where you get your true to that organization training is in the organization itself. Affidavits, the sworn testimonies, what are the facts, approving authority, signs it, all of those kinds of things. Identify the relevant ones, acquire the evidence without damage to that evidence, to make sure that you have every step that's authentic, that it's unchanged. And that sometimes is really hard too, to make sure that it's maintained in the state that it was in, analyze the data without modifying it, report the findings to the right people. So a way to look at that graphically. And then have strong procedures in place, particular procedures that everybody knows, and then make sure it has a manual. Okay, so chapter 12, redone, and I hope this one comes through loud and clear. It should. It shows me that it's loud and clear. When I do a video, I can't reproduce that same video, so as I go through, I try after I read the chapter and look at the PowerPoint. But anyway, I hope you have a good day.